Linda.
Hi, Jessica.
I want to welcome Linda Yaccarino, Chair of NBCU's Advertising and Partnerships, to WTF. We really appreciate you coming on board with us today during this wild time for the industry and the world. So I think that's like a great place to kind of start. I was wondering, so much has happened in the past 5 or 6 months. So I was interested in, what are you hearing from big brands now about the state of play?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very flattered to be here, and it really is an honor to join WTF and give WTF a whole new meaning. So I'm happy to contribute. But what we're hearing, from advertisers now is really, really interesting, and it has really morphed over time. But what the conversations always circle around is that, every business segment has gone through such an incredible structural change that it's very clear that we need to change the way we do business, all of us, and to transform our industries as marketers will help jumpstart the economy. So imagine, what does marketing do? Marketing creates demand. Demand creates sales. Sales develops jobs. Therefore, it is almost an actual higher calling that marketers in every business come together to help jumpstart the economy. But in every company knows that now there's permission more than ever to change the thing they knew that needed to be changed in the first place. And the hurdles or the obstacles of the legacy in the past off the table. Now, innovation is table stakes.
So does that mean advertisers are willing to spend? I mean, that kind of sounds like a chicken and an egg to me. Like, are advertisers willing to spend to do that?
You know what? You hit the nail on the head, especially now that we're in like a cycle where people are starting to think about 2021. It is a chicken and the egg, because while businesses are still not doing as well as they wanted to, we're out of that triage phase of the worst of the worst, but everyone's looking for brighter days for 2021. And they know, there is consensus, they need to market their way out of this. So what it means, or up levels the importance of who they partner with and what partners do they go to get their messages to consumers that have a new mindset, and to get to consumers in the right context, because context today means more now than ever. So it has to be the right partner, because that consumer hears it has to be in the right platform, right time, right language. And it's all different because the consumer hears things very differently and sees things very differently today than they did 5 months ago.
So let's break that out a little bit. And let's focus maybe first on just TV, linear TV advertising, or like the big brands. I mean, which sectors are you seeing coming back? And I mean, are there still sectors that are waiting and, saying, I'm going to give it a few more months before I start?
Well, of course. I mean, I think as we all hope and pray that what I would call most high risk COVID categories, whether it's theme parks or movie studios or travel related, that they are inching their way towards opening up and getting back in business. So I would say that what marketers that have been the mainstays throughout COVID, I would say, your CPG advertisers, so important, because there are essential workers and there are essential goods. So we had essential goods, like the basics that we didn't even think about, whether it was everything from cleaning supplies to food. They were there providing what became so essential every day. And I think what's also important, that more broadly, advertisers in general knew that they needed to be on the air, right? Or they needed to be advertising on any screen. So consumers knew that they were stable and that they were there for them through the crisis. So messages became much less about promotional, I'm having a sale on Saturday, to much more, we're here for you, we're here to protect you, we're stable, we're going to wrap our arms around you because we're in this for the long haul and we want you to be with us for the long haul. So advertising and staying constant, there's reams and reams of data that prove that when a brand is on the air during a crisis like this, that the consumer payback is significant. And the consumer actually invests in those companies that stayed with them and communicated with them during times like these. So certain sectors are stronger than others, but then you also see business segments that are starting to come back. So the stronger than others, I mentioned CPGs, big box retailers, if you want to call them that, starting to come back. The auto industry reimagining and staycations or domestic road trips, so their messages change. So we're starting to see the advertising marketplace evolve, but then there's also ones that are driving growth. When you look at the tech platforms, the streaming platforms that come to linear television, who would have thunk, to say, I want to grow, my business is on fire, I need you guys to help me grow, because there is no surrogate for the big behemoths of linear television because they get the immediacy of scale. And also with the stay-at-home orders or shelter in place, and still today as things are slowly opening up, people are home more, spending more family time together. And what are they doing? They're gathering around the big screen, right? It's a little hard to gather the family around a small screen. So the big screen means everything. And imagine the good fortune with the timely rollout of Peacock. So those are all businesses that are experiencing strength and growth, and we're partnering with those companies too.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into talking about launching Peacock in the middle of a pandemic. But before we get to that, I am interested in kind of so do you see things just picking up over the next 12 months? Like, are people optimistic about that things are going to get better? Like, what's kind of the mood now?
I'm along with you and everyone else. Any little green shoot of optimism or ray of light that peeks through the challenging time that we live in, we hold on to it and we run. But I would say emphatically that right now businesses are focused on 21, and certainly 21 has the expectation of delivering better than 2020. I think the most exciting news about growth, and people like my company, we're being conservatively optimistic, but I think the most exciting thing is that the permission to innovate and throw away any type of the old legacy hurdles that held your company back, all of that is yesterday's news. So the permission to innovate is there. And if you could use like advertising that you've seen, I'll use Saturday Night Live because I think it's a perfect example. It's a 45-year-old show that still is in the epicenter of the cultural zeitgeist. And when SNL came back for its first at-home show, it was such a welcome respite and escape from what was going on. And it was terrific. But then when you looked at the season finale, the production innovation, the advertisers who were on board with us, it was like we innovated 10 years in a 3-month period. And when you look at things, I'll talk about NBCUniversal specifically, we had a Parks and Rec reunion show, and then we completely upended the whole upfront model and rebooted for a reunion special 30 Rock. And 30 Rock, if you saw it, you wouldn't know that it was all done mostly remotely or during COVID. So the evolution, and I would say the rapid escalation of development for production has completely changed all the rules. Therefore, the business practices for someone who heads up, all of trading for the company with advertisers, just a new playbook we're operating with, and that's exciting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, obviously, the other thing which you touched on that you've seen over the past few months is more people are at home, more people are signing up for streaming services. So how does that change the way advertisers are thinking about how they spend their money versus traditional television compared to streaming services?
Well, I think it's completely exciting. So it's great that NBC Universal is at the intersection of both those things. Linear television going through seismic change and at an inflection point in its life cycle. It's also part of the reason that we decided a little over 2 years ago to launch Peacock, right? Little did we know we were going to be launching it right smack in the center of the pandemic. But the media industry has experienced, a lifetime of change during the last 5 months. So when you look at how advertisers think, advertisers have found no surrogate, right? There's no exchange for big, broad reach television. But what they're anxious to get from the big media companies that have premium content is those data-driven opportunities that target their ads better. So they actually want targeting and scale simultaneously. And that's really what Peacock was designed for. A consumer who wants the right ads, but not too many of them. I think we can all agree. Everyone who's watching this today, I think we can all agree that the linear television experience is less than pleasurable, right? So you get too many ads, you can't skip through, and you're like, okay, I can only take so much of that. So Peacock was designed completely by the voice of the consumer, right? So we knew, check the box, free is pretty good. And then when you can take free and match it with a vault of content that we have, but with the streaming mindset of a consumer, then that's how we landed on the lowest commercial load in the industry, and ad innovation that is completely different than all our certainly linear competitors, but streaming competitors. So you'll never see more than 5 minutes of commercials an hour. You'll never see more than 2 ads at one after the next, or 2 ads in one pod, right? So that is an extraordinarily different opportunity. But what's most important is the consumer experience is so pristine. So, but what's most important is that the group of advertisers that we launched with get to be the benefactors to the consumer. And the consumers, since we launched, have been incredibly vocal about being grateful for that experience. So I get just the right amount of ads, and I get this content that's free. So the combination of both those things has really put NBC Universal at the forefront of the future of advertising. And our marketers are really been great partners because we've been building it and developing it together. This just didn't happen overnight. And I just didn't, call up someone to say if they wanted to sponsor Peacock. We developed it along with them.
Right. So let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, I joked with you that this was like, Peacock is a hard lift for you because it's free. So there's no subscription revenue really. And so it's all about the advertising, right? And then you launch it in the middle of a pandemic. So can you talk a little bit about, what you had to rethink and kind of some of the machinations that went into launching the service?
Well, it's really interesting. So people normally think of NBC Universal as a content company. But being part of Comcast NBC Universal is also a technology company. So the biggest, most important thing during those early days of the pandemic was to launch Peacock on time. And that was always in the Comcast footprint, April 15th. So imagine, that's just about 4 weeks in. So we were close to being ready, but we didn't contemplate everyone going to a work from home scenario. Think about the technology needs and the tools that we needed to be able to pull that technology off. So because we are simultaneously a technology company, one of the priorities for our company, because we were consumer first, was launch Peacock on time, along with all the other things that Comcast did, like pausing bill payment for compromised customers and all those things we needed to do for Comcast consumers. We knew, along with things like that, that free was most important. So we said we are going to throw as many resources at this as possible. work from home, we'll get you the equipment that you need, but we're launching on time. So that was an incredible early day priority for us. And we also knew that once we launched it and delivered on time, we would get the immediate consumer feedback, which then was like a great feedback loop to our advertisers who had the first mover advantage. So the great news is, as you know, we launched on time, and then quickly came July 15th, which was our national launch, and the momentum has been phenomenal. You know, I say all the time, I may have said it to you when in early winter, when we first or when we last got together, that, you know, our hunch was that free sounded pretty good. Who would have known? And now, more than a hunch, free sounds pretty smart. So it's been great. The momentum continues, and we continue to over deliver expectations. So it's been a very, very exciting, pride-filled time for our company.
You guys have said that you have 10 million signups. Can you talk a little bit about what that means? Like, what does a sign up mean? Are these people watching? How much are they watching? Are they free?
Well, because we're still in early days, we are not yet able to, you know, kind of dig deep into all of those numbers. I can reiterate that we are delivering ahead of expectations, and to have 10 million subscription signups at this juncture is an exciting indicator of the consumer acceptance and the consumer gratification of becoming a Peacock customer. So it's been really, really important for our company because, you know, in a few short months to have 10 million users, and we're adding more and more every day, and we'll keep you posted. But the fact that we're adding more and more every day, they're coming back to consume more. But imagine the feedback we're getting for the advertisers. So it's immediately going back to the advertisers that are saying to people like Unilever and Talenti's, one of the brands that are along with us, or Target, they're saying, thank you. Thank you for making this experience pristine. Thank you for having such a sophisticated product and a sea of content opportunity that I couldn't imagine. So the feedback has been great and clear, and it's on KPIs that matter. I'm not sitting here talking about inferior measurement. I'm talking about memorability, likability, search starts. So when you're able to get a message to a consumer in the right environment about or with KPIs that moves their bottom line, then you're really participating in the future of advertising. And that's really what is exciting to us. And that's what I spend more days doing, because as more subscribers sign up and as more opportunity comes to the advertisers, that's when we'll really, really be talking about what's next in advertising. And we see commerce as a really, really big new frontier for product like Peacock.
Where are you with commerce? I mean, is that something that's enabled quite yet?
Well, again, as a byproduct of being a sister company of a technology company like Comcast, we have on-command ads where you can actually speak in a voice-activated remote, and you will get that particular offer from that advertiser immediately sent to you. So our whole strategy was, as old brick and mortar doors were closing, we were going to open up new retail doors for our customers. And that's via the shoppable on-command ad that we have, because that's enabled already on Peacock. And you'll see that jumping over to linear in a big way across all of the NBCUniversal platforms.
Interesting. One thing I want to make sure we get to, obviously a big topic in the industry these days, is Facebook and the advertisers that boycotted Facebook over the way they treated content that was deemed racist and incorrect. And I'm just interested, kind of, what is that, what's your take on the ad boycott? And, what are you hearing from advertisers about social media and digital in general?
Well, I can really only speak about the relationship that NBC Universal has with all of our advertisers. And as you know, the television business is one of the most highly managed industries in the country. And by sheer existence of our broadcast station licenses, you know, English language with NBC broadcast and Spanish language with Telemundo, we've always been, just table stakes to do business, responsible for all of the content that we feed to our customers, in this case, domestically in the United States. So when you are a company that you have decades of experience and that obligation, think about it, you know, over time when all the new tech platforms were growing, being a legacy media company or being a linear media company was something people always took issue with. We wear that experience, and in NBCU's case, the 93 years of experience and responsibility of that leadership, we wear those things like badges of honor, right? So we take really seriously our responsibility of what content we serve to all consumers in this country. I think as it relates, you mentioned the tech platforms or the ad boycotts, it underscores the importance for choosing your partners carefully in the context of your ads and what content you're airing next to. Because on television, it's not a thing. You know where your spots are airing. It's never an aha or a moment where you say, oh my God, I didn't want to do that. You know in advance, right? The tech platforms, though, you have to think about it. They don't have that legacy experience. They're not a 93-year-old company. And I think they're maturing and coming into their own and have to re-examine how they feel about the responsibility of their platform and the content they're serving, you know, in their cases globally, but certainly as it pertains to the moments of time we are in this country today. So I think you'll see a maturation of those approaches from the platforms, and certainly, you know, everyone's anticipating new rules and guidelines for how they approach those.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Linda, we touched on a bunch of topics. I really appreciate it. I do want to open it up to live Q&A. So let's see what kind of questions people have for you. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. It's been great. I feel like we could stay here all day, and I look forward to answering any question that anyone has.
Great.
And let's set up time to talk after this so we can just catch up in general and like to pick your brain about a few things. That big brain of yours.
Hey, Linda. It's so great to get to ask you some questions about everything going on right now. One thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about, and I was interested in, you know, Peacock is kind of like this startup within NBC, right? And you were managing that and helping to manage that while also like leading all things advertising in NBC. I mean, can you talk about like how you kind of tried to, did you have to kind of create another culture for this new division? Like, can you talk about how you manage that? Because I'm sure a lot of our attendees kind of are trying to do that as well within bigger companies.
Well, one of the great things about being at NBCUniversal is that while we are this gigantic, enormous company and part of an even bigger company of Comcast, and we're this multi-brand 93-year-old company, what's been great is that we've always been a group or a team that's about consumer behavior. So always by default of that, what's next? So when Peacock was greenlit over a couple of years ago, we took the best of people that we had working at our company, and we gave them a very long leash to create and innovate. So when you're on a project that has no rules and no boundaries, you get a freedom, right? And you get this enthusiasm that you're building a new product, but within the walls of a well-funded, rock-solid organization. So you have a little bit more wind in your back than if you really are at a small, scrappy startup, but you have this enthusiasm, all the success of the decades behind you. And that's what enabled us to just take this blank canvas and create what is known to Peacock today. So think about the impact on the culture of the broader organization. For our employees, now we have an incredible new proof of concept that innovation and creation actually can live at a big multi-branded company. We're really excited about that.
Interesting. We have a great question from Kylie. She's wondering, have you garnered any interesting data from users or consumption during COVID that has surprised you?
Well, I have to say it's been really exciting to see what types of content is actually driving the momentum of Peacock. So I think what makes sense is that the tried and true content, what is just so expansive in the NBCUniversal vault, is so attractive to users who have a nostalgia about the content that NBCUniversal can offer. But I think what's also important is that the expanse of the audiences we're attracting, right? So think about it from 18 or from birth to 80, right? So you say that we reach so many consumers at any life stage, which is really important. So if you think of our animated content with all our Chris Meledandri animated movies to all the way to more of our, whether it is our long form series or things like Jimmy Fallon and the Tonight Show, that's like wrapping a comfort blanket around you. So it's really about the expanse of the attractiveness of our content. And then I think our biggest takeaway or our biggest, kind of KPIs that we're taking early on away from Peacock is that the content that's offered for free is really attractive to consumers, and that Peacock speaks very directly to how they're living lives today, which is that I want my video on demand wherever, whenever I can get it. And that's really what I think is the key and the key differentiator for Peacock versus everything that's out there. Think about it. We've got a gigantic original content machine, news, sports, in addition to our original content that'll be coming for Peacock, right, already, and such a big slate coming soon. In addition to the fact that you have this foundational base of just a massive archive of content. So I think it's the combination of those two things that's resonating so well early on with consumers.
And okay. Sophie has a great question about your journey. You are, one of the most senior women in the industry. Can you talk a little bit about your journey there and kind of,
Well, I hope that most senior women in the industry doesn't mean that I'm too old.
I mean, higher up.
I know, I'm kidding. I'm
one of the most higher up.
I'm really kidding. But I think
amazing for a 16-year-old.
No, thank you. I think what I like to talk a lot about my journey is that I really never looked at the current job or position that I had within the confines of my job description or the lane that I was in, right? So I talk often about making a concerted effort to stay focused on what your North Star is. Where do you want to get to in your career? And that should propel you out of your lane. So be always a curious student. Like if I wasn't curious about where the consumer was going or what's coming next in our industry, I wouldn't have been part of the team that urged the company to launch Peacock, an ad-supported platform. So think about that new conversation that wasn't just about subscription VOD, right? So constantly think about broader aspects of the core job you're in. So veer a little bit out of your lane. It molds you and propels you into what you're getting to next. And I talk a lot about that often when I talk about my journey, because it kept me motivated, because I always stayed focused on what was next. And for me, being in my core job of content or advertising meant I needed to be as what next is, where is the consumer going? And what would those trends look like as it relates to or when it's applied to the monetization side of our industry?
Would you ever want to be a CEO of a company?
I would say, of course, and absolutely. So, and I think really what gives my answer as to yes is that I'm such a focused person. And also through this time at NBC Universal, which has been amazing, I've become a transformation expert. Because think about a company that's 93 years old, right? Which, years ago, people say, oh, they're that old legacy media company. For me and my team and our company, we wear that history like a badge of honor, because we can say you take content data distribution and apply it to this massive technology machine, and you land on something like Peacock, or you land on an upfront show that became a reunion show like 30 Rock. So I look at that and saying, if you're focused on future and you could deliver growth, I think that's a nice combination to be a CEO for a company.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about it this morning, was watching the news about Jane Fraser, who's going to be the first female CEO of a global bank. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. We've seen an complete almost turnover of almost all the large media companies in the past 12 to 18 months. Yet there's no women at top of any of these companies. I mean, why?
I think you need to give it a minute or two. And I wouldn't want to label that it's just, women aren't there, because you think about really transformational leaders and leadership qualities to propel a company in the future. And I couldn't be an ounce more bullish about my new boss, Jeff Shell. And I really am not just saying that. He's very, very future-focused executive and has been performing at such a level during this time period, whether it's cultural unrest or COVID. It has really been incredible to watch. That being said, it's certainly time. And when you think about the new CEO that we're talking about now, and you look at it at a company like NBC Universal, where entrepreneurship is rewarded, I think that you're going to see a combination of skills or attributes that are normally applied to female attributes, like empathy, like relationships, like nurturing. I think you'll see a new wave of CEOs emerging that embrace those, what normally or historically was female attributes, and ascending women to positions, because you have to stay so focused on your community. And that community is your customer. That community is the social culture that we need to pay attention to. And I really am very bullish on the rise of women into those positions now, based on the natural attributes that they have.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll be really interesting to watch. Well, Linda, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you soon.
Jessica, it's always a pleasure. And I was really, really honored and flattered to be with you all today. So be well.
At Intuit, we believe you cannot have prosperity without equality. Women and people of color should not be paid less than men for the same work. 3 years ago, we made a commitment to reach and maintain pay equity for our employees. But pay equity is an ongoing process, and all companies must join this fight. Like the 19th Amendment, we are not done.